Good afternoon, friends. I'd like to welcome you today to What's in Tegan's Storage Locker. It's the show that dares to ask the question, just what is in my storage locker? The answer today, well, friend, the answer is comics. The answer is always going to be comics. I pick up a pile of comic books that I still have about my person for some reason. We sift through them via the medium of the electric eye. There's a little cat who's already had a tantrum tonight, the first time I started recording. One of many recording attempts over the years foiled by his obstreperousness. But for the moment, he's looking directly at me, but he is lying down, so we'll see. If you like this show, for some reason, if you like me arguing with my cat, check out the Patreon. I got tons of stuff there for you to download. Decades worth of writing. I put up a ton of videos on this very site as well. Plus lots of more other stuff that I usually wait till the back of the show to tell you about. I'm busy. I'm a busy person. But not too busy to take some time for my friends, the Fantastic Four, and their friends, the Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes, I know, we just read an issue of the Guardians of the Galaxy. We'll read another. But this is the Guardians in their more traditional biome, which is a tie-in another book. They're perpetual guest stars, which is why this incarnation at least, having that really, more or less popular run for 5 years, that was an anomaly. This version of the characters just never really caught fire as more than, sometimes guest stars, except under Jim Valentino during the big build-up to Image years, which means, as I said before, even Midlist is still selling a lot of comic books in those days. So by 1991, they knew Guardians of the Galaxy wasn't getting canceled. They knew it was selling well enough that they could tie it into a crossover with a book that was, even still by 1991, selling pretty okay because it was a solid newsstand performer for every day of its existence. It was a pillar of the American newsstand for decades. Fantastic Four. Now you can't get a Fantastic Four comic at a supermarket. No matter how hard you try to ask, they won't sell it to you. In any event, this is actually a direct market copy of this, ironically enough, since I just said that. But this was the 50 years of Captain America icon that ran on a lot of comics for that year, because I think that year only had a couple anniversaries. It was like Cap and the Fantastic Four, and they made a big deal out of both of those, it felt like. And then after that, okay, everyone has, in Marvel, everyone has an anniversary there. Anyway, I'll put you out of your misery since I'm sure you're dying to know. This Guardians of the Galaxy crossover in Fantastic Four Annual 24, signifying that this book had been around. It had been around for a lot longer than 24 years, but 24 of those years it had managed to squeak out an annual, and they don't number annuals anymore. Why are annuals the thing that they don't do legacy numbering for? Screwing up those? They should never have screwed up the annual numbers, and now every year everyone gets an annual number 1. I don't want to buy Thor annual number 1. I want to buy Thor annual 40, whatever. 40's cool. 1 just tells me that you have no faith in the product. So anyway, this was $2 for a thick comic with a spine in 1991. Fantastic Four Wasn't selling X-Force numbers, but this was the year that X-Force sold X-Force numbers. So a lot of people were buying Marvel Comics in general. Fantastic Four, as I've said before, it sold well on the newsstand. Thor was a newsstand juggernaut alongside Conan. That book sold really well. So this year, what's going on? You got this crossover here, which is themed around Korvac. And that probably sounds like nothing to you. But at the time, there was definitely a sense how they sold the story was, well, you know, we haven't used Korvac in a while since he died. But the Guardians of the Galaxy are time travelers, and they fought him first, so they can do another Korvac story. And I think it was the first big Korvac story after, you know, his original, storyline in the Avengers. So bringing him back was, all right, kind of a big deal. They're probably not going to do this guy in the movies anytime soon, although I say that, I don't know. They could get desperate and give us Michael Korvac one of these days. This year, all the annuals had little origin features. A couple of the books had fun with it. I remember the one in the Hulk annual was actually written by Peter David, and it was a reminiscence by one of the guys who had, I think, worked at the Gamma base, although it's been a long time since I've read it. But it sticks in my mind that it was one of the few of the origin entries, because more of them were like this, which is just 2 pages. There you go. Boom. That's Fantastic Four #1. That's not even Fantastic Four #1. That's the first third of Fantastic Four #1. They go up in the rocket, etc., etc. So, who drew this comic? That's what you're dying to know. Well, let me put you out of your misery here, because this comic, at least the first part of it, was drawn by Al Milgrom. It was also inked and written by him as well. It's credited to Milgrom to the power of 3. Novak, Witterstadt, Macchio, DeFalco. So, yeah. As I find, whenever I look back at Al Milgrom's work, which at the time I remember seeming so pedestrian to me, I'll be honest with you. And I think that's something maybe a lot of people have fessed up to over the years. Is like, yeah, he had a definite style. It was his style. He could break out of it a little bit. He could draw something that looked a tiny bit more like it was inked in 1991 than 1978. But in hindsight, yeah, this is a great looking comic book. It's just a team up between the Fantastic Four and the what now seems like the off-brand old school Guardians of the Galaxy. And this is Korvac. This is the end of the Korvac saga, where basically Korvac wrecks the Avengers without even trying. He just has way too much power for them to do anything. And then I won't tell you what happens. I'm not going to say it's a cop-out, but it's interesting. It's a thinker. It is a thinker. And notice they're not talking about adapting that one, but they might be able to get a good movie out of it. Who knows? We may find out one of these days, because they're getting desperate. I just went to see the Deadpool movie, and it had Zenpool from the Axis crossover in it. So yeah, okay. I get it. I read every comic that Zenpool appeared in. I remember that. That's a joke for me. At a certain point, that feels kind of dirty. You know, maybe tell someone else a joke. Look at how awesome this Galactus is. And here's Al Milgrom dealing with explicitly a Walt Simonson concept. What on paper seems like it would be extraordinarily dull, which is just rows and rows of these bureaucrats' desks floating in space. On paper, it actually becomes kind of a dynamic environment because the whole page is filled with stuff. Everyone's cramped in there and really stressed out about it. So, you know, one of those Walt Simonson ideas that really makes sense when you dig down on it, not just as a tribute to the great Mark Grunwald. Wow, how weird is it that they hired a Wilson brother to play Mark Grunwald? That, admittedly, not one I could have predicted. Not a move I could have predicted. But Milgrom, now I can look back and say, oh, he's a pro. He has a very distinctive style, but it is remarkably pliable. He's able to make this, Walt Simonson idea still more or less come across like it should on the page. Kind of looks like Al Milgrom drew it, but you recognize what it is. Look at this. These are these Badoon dudes that we were talking about the other day. They're nobodies. The Badoon have never mattered. They've been punching bags. They probably got killed by the Brood at some point. Just not cool people. No one likes to be around them. So they just go around conquering places, and they conquered Earth in the 30th century. And these guys rose up as freedom fighters. That's the original Guardians bag, more or less. This guy's story is significantly more complicated. Trust me on that. Starhawk. Take it from the one who knows. Starhawk's story is exhausting. But that's the fun of Bronze Age Marvel, is a real prevalence of characters like that who have really dense, long tales of exhaustive continuity, because writers do stuff to him because they can't do stuff to Captain America. So they give him a really weird life. Possibly the weirdest life of any character in the entire Marvel universe. I realize that's saying something, but Starhawk, definitely a weird life, and people wonder why he is a barely functional human being. So they have to go back in time. I think this storyline takes place before the number one issue that we just read the other day. I think there's a continuity note to that effect. So they go back to try and find the Fantastic Four. They have a giant space station that travels in time. Nice work if you can get it. And it's a simple matter for them to pop back to the late 20th century, go in to check out what's going on with our friends, the Fantastic Four. So yeah, Al Milgrom just drawing the Fantastic Four chilling. This is great. I don't know what it would take to get me to actually read all these words again. There seem to be a lot of them. I like words on the comics page, but I also understand that you can do less with more if you want to. You just don't want to. So yeah, what's happening is they're basically tracking down Korvac's, some time travel thing. It goes back in time through his lineage. Yes, I know. I hate these stories. Any stories that deal with lineages of characters across thousands of years, it's like, no. Korvac doesn't have a direct ancestor 1,000 years ago. Korvac has thousands and thousands and thousands of ancestors. Nothing else makes any sense. And yet, I'm sorry, bit of a pet peeve of mine. Anyway, I believe this story is just about this woman who just gets the spark of power from 1,000 years in the future. She doesn't know what's going on. And suddenly, the Fantastic Four and these other guys, there's a fighting chance. Even if you live in rural Australia, there's a fighting chance you've seen these guys on the TV. But these guys, no. These guys are strange. Coming at you from out of nowhere, and suddenly this woman just has, the power of Michael Korvac for no reason. Oh, but now she knows. Korvac lives on. The ultimate nullifier will never find me since I quit the scene of my Avengers battle. Okay, that's it. That's the hook. His brain, his mind is escaping. That's what's in that ball of power that's going backwards through the time stream. I'm sorry. It's been a while since I've really paid attention to the plot niceties of this story, which I remember enjoying quite a bit because it had the Guardians in it, and I was all on board for the Guardians in 1991. I love these guys. Now look at this. This is awesome. Yeah, and Starhawk's one of the reasons why he was just never having a good time was he had to share his body with his wife. It was as I said before, it was like a Captain Marvel deal, only it was his ex-wife and they hated each other because he let their kids die. And that is 100%, like 100% a downer, true story beat with that guy. What was I just telling you? And this guy appeared in a fair amount of comics over the years. Like I say, the Guardians of the Galaxy in the future, they have surprisingly adult concerns. For being like some other, in other respects, kind of unspectacular Bronze Age designs. And yet somehow they do work together on the page, even with the later editions. So yeah. Oh, is this Gateway. All right, Gateway. Reed Richards meets Gateway. Is that a meeting that needed to happen? Is it a meeting that did happen? Yes. But yeah, I can't think of any other reason they would have met before this. Oh yeah. He's out racing the Ultimate Nullifier. That's what Galactus is doing. He sets the plot in motion when he figures out, I think this is after he figures out that Korvac stole something from him, because that's how he gets started on the ladder to great cosmic power, just like Doctor Doom in Secret Wars, which was also written by Jim Shooter. The first step to godhood is just to steal aboard Galactus's spaceship and just grab some stuff, just whatever you can, just grab and go and turn yourself into a god. But he usually catches on, and in this case he sends the rays of the Ultimate Nullifier, but then he dies at the hands of the Avengers. So yeah, okay, now we're caught up. We're finally caught up with the plot of this 33-year-old Fantastic Four crossover. All right, excellent. But they're only in this chapter of it. Next chapter is Thor, and I believe the Thor annual is dealing with Dargo Couture. Is that it? The 23rd or 26th century Thor? I don't know. I've read every comic book that character is in. A DeFalco and Friends creation. But I can't remember if it was the 26th or the 23rd century. You know, DeFalco made use of a lot of guys like Zarko the Tomorrow Man. He really sold me on Zarko the Tomorrow Man. And guess how useful that knowledge turned out to be. When was the last time you thought about Zarko the Tomorrow Man? So yeah, this is a backup, not the Fantastic Four, but for some reason, for a few years running, they put Molecule Man backup strips. Well, I guess I understand why, because Molecule Man was originally a Fantastic Four villain, but the thing with the Secret Wars is plot-wise, like, he doesn't have a problem with the Fantastic Four anymore. They actually kind of avoid each other. They have no reason to fight. But he was still a supporting character in as much as they put backups in the annual. So this is James Brock's story, pencils, Albrecht and Dazan, inks. Of those, Tom Dazan is the only one I recognize. Chrissy Glianopoulos lettering, Kevin Tinsley on color. But yeah, I remember liking this story because this is a gorgeous page right here. If you run across this book for 50 cents, you want to get it for this page. Look at this page. This is a nice looking page, you have to admit. A surprisingly nice page for a Fantastic Four backup. But this is a nice looking, interesting story, which is basically dealing with the Molecule Man. I'm not going to say rebuilding his life, because he's not rebuilding his life. He's just dealing with all that happened in the Secret Wars, which, inexplicably really heavily focused on him. That's one thing to come out of the Secret Wars, was that both in those stories and in his Avengers run, Jim Shooter really plucked the Molecule Man out of total obscurity. He'd been in less than a dozen comic books until he ended up on Battle World, maybe more than a dozen, but they were, he was fighting Man-Thing for a while in the 70s. Things weren't going that great for him. But yeah, the Molecule Man is a great character. The one thing I can say about Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars is that he did make good use of the Molecule Man. I generally liked what he did with the character, although I still think, to this day, what I've maintained for decades, the Molecule Man is a more interesting character than just about anyone but Jim Shooter has ever really acknowledged. He could be a headliner. Shooter took that basic idea of, what if the most powerful person in the world was also not really all there? It's the hook for Dr. Manhattan as well, but it was also the hook for Jim Shooter's Solar Man of the Atom. And I think it's an interesting hook for a character that no one's ever really done just a good ongoing with a character like that. Solar Man of the Atom in the 90s was the noble exception there. But there's a real alien character for you. I don't remember seeing these sleeping bags in the store, or I probably would have been stupid enough to buy one. I was, at that age, I didn't know nothing about Raceland's game, though. This man, I saw him, I knew to stay away from him. He's nothing good can come from that. I mean, he's trying to sell me his own game. I can't trust a man like that. So, yeah, I don't know the people who drew this comic book, but this is a nice looking backup here. With Volcana, another character who they could probably do a lot more, but no one ever really does anything with. People do a lot more with Titania, and she has the same exact origin as Titania. But again, I think you can actually do something, interesting things, with the Molecule Man as a protagonist. Likewise with Volcana. Just not someone who ever really wanted to be a superhero or a supervillain. But she made a weird decision during a stressful period of her 20s, and now she's extraordinarily powerful. You can't say how powerful, because she's never developed her abilities or trained or anything. She sees them as something of a burden, but if she wants to, she can switch to to this magma body that is, just a remarkable powerhouse. Hot, strong, durable. Oh, and yes, this was about her. She's fighting Claw, and apparently, yeah, she figures out a different state. And this is something else someone did with her character that I don't think was ever followed up on, was just suddenly, oh yeah, she can be different forms of stone. So she can be more like, maybe less the Sandman. And who was the sand character who fought Thor? He had another sand person in his rogues gallery for a little while there. And it's the Molecule Man. What was I just saying? Oh, and it's the Sci-Fi Book Club. People are buying books again. Everywhere I look, I see news stories. Maybe the book industry is in a weird place, but people are buying books. You could bring back the Sci-Fi Book Club. Offered nice exclusive editions. I'm getting ads for the Folio Society. I subscribed to the Folio Society when it was just small printings of old books about medieval England. And now they reprint comic books. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel about that. So, yeah, it's a nicely drawn, interestingly colored battle between two members, well, technically three members of the Fantastic Four's extended rogues gallery. Although, these days, I think most people would probably say Claw is a Black Panther nemesis because certainly I think they're still arch enemies, aren't they? Because I say that and realize, well, most people probably think Killmonger is number one now. And honestly, in 2024, he probably is. But this guy used to be, and he was for a while. Killmonger wasn't used for a long time. So, yeah, just a nice looking comic where these two tertiary supporting characters decide that they're not going to have any kind of a relationship anymore, and it ends with them going their separate ways. So yeah, just a adult drama in the mighty Marvel manner. See, interesting human drama. This is the kind of stuff people want to see in comic books. You telling me it isn't? This is like what half the DC line is now. That's a handsome looking surfer shirt right there. And there's a Sinkovich piece. And this Captain America design, which just has a baffling lineup of characters. 50 years of Captain America and other heroes. And it's got Dr. Doom on it. So, yeah. But this Fantastic Four one is the keeper. These are all probably worth a lot of money. I know that some of the old Graffiti Designs t-shirts are just through the roof. I have a couple of them somewhere. I'm not in any hurry, but I have been made aware of the fact that I could probably sell them for a good going rate. So here's a Super Skrull story. Not very many Super Skrull solo stories in this world. Len Kaminsky. He's written a bunch of Iron Man that we've looked at. Chris Ivey. Usually he's an inker. Sometimes he's Dwayne Turner's inker. Tim DeZahn inks. Darren Auk letters. Suzanne Delorto on colors. So yeah, he got some shine in Englehart's Silver Surfer. And then again during the Annihilation period. So, yeah, I mean, what are Super Skrull stories ever going to be about? He's dealing with honor, and his duties to the Empire, and praying to some weird Skrull god. She loves you. Remember when they wouldn't stop saying that? That was a halfway decent idea, too, and they just threw that away. On a terrible TV show. What does that tell you about the going rate of ideas in 2024? And that's Captain Reptile, who was a villain from the Englehart run of Silver Surfer, who was subsequently turned into a dragon. So they had this really awesome, like, reptilian space pirate, and they turned him into a dragon. Who isn't a space pirate anymore. Although, I don't know. Maybe he's been a pirate in the years since. He may have been a pirate in books that I've read, and I don't remember. All right. Well, all right. You're sick of hearing me talk about the subscription forms here, but trace the health of the company and the seeds of its demise in the length of the subscription form, and how many of these books lasted past a year, 2 years. Still here in 1991, this is filled with books that have sold consistently for years. Or, something that just started up. Like Wonder Man. Even Wonder Man had a decent run of a few years in the 90s. Web of Spider-Man. New Warriors. These books had lengthy runs. But then they just start adding all these titles that weren't even around long enough to pump out a full year if you subscribed before the first issue. So there were a lot of people who were getting their subscriptions extended with Amazing Spider-Man in those years. But how many people were subscribing to, there's the question. So, yeah, they're fighting. I don't think I would have got too excited about it. I don't think anyone's going to get too excited about this. They gave the Super Skrull something to do for Annihilation. So, yeah, this must have been near that clutch I looked at the other day because I recognized some of these ads. NBA Hoops, man, that is some really lackluster graphic design there. I'm sorry. That feels mean-spirited to look at a 33-year-old sports card ad and think they don't look very good, and yet they don't look very good. Oh, well. Okay, this looks fun. I don't really remember who was in this, but this was Batman Chronicles, which I always bought because it was where I bought comics. Well, that, but also, this was just a strong period for readable Batman books in general across the line. And this was the quarter, I think it was quarterly. I think it was a quarterly anthology that was just different things every go-around. Usually 3 stories, I think, although sometimes they did cross over. Sometimes they didn't cross over. But they usually had themes. There was an Elseworlds issue that we actually looked at on the... I know, you're sick of hearing me say that. Looked at it on the TikTok. It has some Paul Pope, early Paul Pope Batman, not the Batman 100 character. A different Batman. But yeah, they got good creators to come in and do stories for the quarterly here. So you see Devin K. Grayson. Oh, well, speak of the devil. Her name comes up a fair amount on this show. Duncan Fegredo. Probably not someone whose name comes up anywhere near enough. Lee Loffridge. Chuck Dixon. Can't avoid it if you pluck your hand into the Batman books of this era at all. Even books with really good art sometimes, In every life, a little rain must fall. But he's working with Dwayne Turner and Danny Miki. So this is summer of 97. This is, right now, the team that's working on... Someone is having an absolute purple fit. I have to clear the runway so that he doesn't wreck the house any worse. So anyway, where were we? Yes, Dwayne Turner, Danny Miki. I believe they were either starting or in the middle of their run on Curse of Spawn, which was, well, it's something I'm going to be writing about at some point here in the near future. So you can look forward to that. But it's a real unacknowledged milestone from the period, I think. I'll say this for my cat. He's recently developed the zoomies. The real, I'm going to run like a bat out of hell from one side of the house to the other, zoomies. He didn't have. He had the rascality, not the running at high speeds. Now the running at high speeds has arrived with his manhood, so to speak. And I think the house is going to fall apart. It's probably going to collapse on its foundations. It's like this little cannonball just blows through the hallway all day, every day. All right, so this is more or less commemorating the Batman and Robin movie, which, most of the creatives probably weren't enamored. As at the time, there was no honeymoon period for this movie. Pretty much the moment it came out. Now, the weird thing is, you go back and look at the record, it still wasn't really a flop. Like, you expect it to be a flop when you look back and you say, like, no. Box office was kind of soft, but it made money. It just wasn't a movie at the time that anyone really wanted. But I've argued for the movie in the past. I think it's brilliant. I think it's one of the most brilliant superhero movies, certainly, that's ever been made. Absolutely 100% distinctive experience. I think Batman Forever, it's interesting. It's too abrasive, I think, to be really great. But this, I think he gets it right. And as a movie, I think this is an excellent looking movie. Pay attention to the mise-en-scene in this movie. Look at the mise-en-scene that Shoemaker is able to achieve in 1997, working with, I don't think entirely, but largely practical effects out of necessity. And then look at what Lucas does just a couple years later in The Phantom Menace in terms of that same type of immersive mise-en-scene. I think, I can't say enough nice things about this movie, except this man is in it, which seems a mistake in hindsight. But, age lets us be frank with ourselves, doesn't it? So, yes, Devin Grayson, she's giving us her middle name on this outing, with Duncan Fegredo, as I said, and it's Batman and Catwoman, and it's, well, here you go. Here's some subtext for you, kids. Oh, and Batgirl. Batgirl was in the movie, too. If it has a weakness, it's the fact that it's really overstuffed. It has a Batgirl plotline. It has an excellent Alfred is Sick storyline. One of the best versions of Alfred is Sick that you've ever seen out of a 1950s Technicolor Weeper. It is gorgeous. We did not appreciate Joel Schumacher for what he could do. Go back and look at that movie with a fresh eye, and you will see every frame of it is a goddamn masterpiece. Doom 64. Did people like the Doom 64 port? I don't remember really hearing anything about it. It was so far removed from the original Doom, and that was the one that really hit. It didn't seem like, as someone who barely had any exposure to the series, it doesn't seem like the later volumes had quite the same impact at all. But if it was for the 64, it probably at least looked pretty decent. I had a 64. I wasn't really playing video games, but there were like wrestling games and stuff you could play at parties, and there was the Zelda game that I could just play for hours and hours and hours and still not get past the Deku tree. That was pretty much it for me in video games, I'm sorry. Just not even being able to really figure out how to do anything with the Zelda game. Banging my head against that Mario game, which I maintain. Mario? Low-key? Mario is hard. Winning Mario takes skill. I've done it a few times in my life, and I feel like it's something I will probably never be able to do again. But look at how beautiful this is. And then look at this weird 90s soda ad. They went home early that day. Man, would I drink a Mellow Yellow? Would I murder a Mellow Yellow if you put it in front of me in 2024? Probably. I probably wouldn't have one every day, but man, I drank a fair amount of that stuff in the day. Apple Jacks. Don't ask why, we eat what we like. How is that? I'm all for putting ads in comic books, but I can see they were really struggling to figure out how to sell cereal to people. Man, look at how nice this is. Oh, that's interesting. She introduces herself as Batwoman, and then Robin. Oh. See, that's why we hate Dick Grayson, folks. That's why we hate Dick Grayson. That's a problem with me in DC. that keeps me away from a fair amount of their line, if I'm being completely frank with you, is the fact that I just do not care for Dick Grayson. Well, what do you like? Seems like you dislike a lot of things. Well, I'm allowed. I bought Nightwing for a few years when Scott McDaniel did it. It was about the only time I ever really liked the character, and it was because I liked how Scott McDaniel drew him. Man, this is nice. If you come across this one, this is something that probably hasn't been seen that many times because this is a short story. It's not tying into anything. Part of a bigger storyline. I like this. You can sort of see Fegredo taking a lot from Chaykin here. These seem like very Chaykin-esque layouts. That's an influence for you. Oh, yeah. Chuck Dixon, Dwayne Turner, Danny Miki, Mr. Freeze. Boom. Man, that's a nice looking Mr. Freeze right there. There's Harvey Bullock looking. Oh my God, look at this lighting. What Greg Wright. Well, there you go. That's why it looks so good. It's got Greg Wright on the colors. Man. Oh my God, look at that. Look at that, folks. Folks. I know I owe you a piece of writing on Dwayne Turner. I know that. Look at this. Look at this. This is what he was doing. This is what he was doing in 97. And no one was paying attention. He was on Spawn and Batman at the same time. And it didn't seem like anyone was really paying attention. Book sold pretty well. You go back and look at it, though. And you just think, well, this should have put him in the next stratosphere. And it just never really happened. And he left to work in the movies, so, you know. He's laughing all the way to the bank. At least, you know, I know things are tough all over in the creative arts right now. But at least 15, 20 years ago, still, if you were in comics, you could probably get a better deal working in Hollywood. And probably again someday. I'm not fatalistic about the long-term future of American arts, simply because demand hasn't decreased as they've been slowly trying to stifle them at every turn due to corporate consolidation. Just live long enough to see the upswing, I guess, is, you know, the only wisdom I have as far as that goes. Andy Helfer writing, Cully Hamner and Robert Campanella. Well, there you go. Cully Hamner? There was a time when maybe you'd buy a comic book just because it had Cully Hamner's name on it. And here's Poison Ivy, the headliner now. Not a headliner in 1997, although, worth pointing out, honorable mention here, the one thing people generally liked about that Batman movie was Ivy as indelibly portrayed by Uma Thurman. I believe we've seen this Jack Davis Mad ad for Tang. Well, that's $195. It's probably worth like $5,000 now. I am a fan of Batgirl, I guess you could say. There's no secret of that. I would not put that in my house. I'm sorry. 25, 30 years have passed. I can be honest with the world. Not every statue is worth bringing home. Look at how nice this is. Damn. And they're selling the 3 movies that people did like. People still like Batman Forever a lot more than they like Batman and Robin. And certainly the first 2. The first 2 speak for themselves. I don't recognize any of these names. All right. Free on box of Nerds Candy. Batman detective cards. And that looks like... Trying to read that. Is that... Brayfogle. That's Norm Brayfogle. So they got Norm Brayfogle to do some... what looks like little trading card Batman battles here with Penguin looking like the Penguin. None of this Oz Cop or whatever they're trying to sell the children now. Bane, Two-Face, and the Joker. I guess they have more that they're not showing. All right. Willy Wonka. He hasn't fought Batman yet. I suppose we should consider ourselves lucky. Okay, here's one. This is a thick one. This is a massive. This is my favorite type of reprint, which is more or less comic book proportions, but really fat. This was only $2.99 in 2000. This is great. And, you know, if you run across this today, you'll probably pay 50 cents for it. Fantastic. Just a thick comic book about old Marvel Western guys. I can read old Marvel Westerns all day. And this was $3 in 2000. Gunslingers, startling stories of the Wild Wild West. And you get a nice new, well, I don't, it's probably new. Looks like later period John Buscema, Two Gun Kid. Caleb Hamner, Rawhide Kid. Caleb Hamner, he's someone who doesn't get any shine at all. Two Gun Kid, he's an Avenger. The Rawhide Kid, well, it's just passed lightly. What are they selling? Are they selling some form of pain? Trapped by Grizzly Grogan. Stanley and Dick Ayers. Man, look at this. Yeah, I've really become a lot more aware of Dick Ayers in recent years. He drew a lot of Marvel comics. He drew stuff that Jack Kirby did not want to draw. He drew stuff that John Buscema did not want to draw. He just generally drew a lot of stuff that maybe wasn't paid attention to as much, like the Western and some of the war books. But man, I've really become an evangel on the Dick Ayers and Dick Severin, Sergeant Fury. You know, Dick Ayers really knew how to draw. He was sparse. He had paid a lot of attention, you could tell, to early 60s Kirby, which is very efficient. And what was I saying about Mike Allred the other day? You got these ropey little figures, but the action's clear. Storytelling, you break up different kind of beats. Oh, there's a horse. Can you sit down in your saddle? Is that allowed? But yeah, I've always thought, straight up, this guy, Two Gun Kid, he's an Avenger. I've always wondered why he's never been in more Avengers stories. Who doesn't want to just, like, put the Two Gun Kid in an Avengers book? Like, oh, he's a cowboy. What's he supposed to do? Like, well, he's a cowboy. Use your imagination. It's called comic books. What's Aquaman going to do while they're fighting Starro? I don't know. Nature finds a way. He's great. Because the early Marvel Western stuff is a really unappreciated gold mine of some very interesting cartooning. Sparse, obviously done with an eye towards speed, but not necessarily suffering for it, because this is very clear material. Kirby and Ayers. So hey, here's some Jack Kirby fighting a, well, I don't know about this one. Fighting a living totem pole? Well, this was probably done. If this was still Kirby doing Western stuff, this was early 60s. Early 60s, before they figured out, you know, where the money was for him at that point. So yeah, just a random Jack Kirby Western story. I think Jack Kirby's most famous Western is Boys Ranch. That was mid-50s with Joe Simon. But no one has ever really taken a shine, particularly to any of his Western stuff. And you can definitely see this is Kirby in the early 60s. Sparse, almost Spartan. He's learning, I think, how to get away with as little as possible, which is, kind of a necessary thing. Well, this was his livelihood. This was very consciously what he was doing to pay the mortgage when he was at a very low point in his life. So he wasn't putting as much effort into these stories as he was putting into the work that he had owned with Joe Simon. No. That early 50s stuff, Boys Ranch, Fighting American, those are nice looking books. These are interesting looking books. And yet somehow they still work. And I think they almost play like exercises for someone who is capable of doing the work that Kirby had done. These are very simplistic constructions. And yet, I'm not commenting on what's going on here because, if they're fighting like owl hoots and rustlers and bank robbers, the occasional monster, but, living totem pole. I don't know, man. Maybe we'll just get in trouble if we stop to read the words on these. This is probably what they were trying to promote, was this Blaze of Glory series, which was, I think, them trying to do Unforgiven with the Marvel Western guys. That was sort of the push here. As, because it's Two Gun Kid, Red Wolf, Rawhide Kid, Gunhawk, Kid Colt, Caleb Hammer, Outlaw Kid, Ghost Rider, and this was the original Ghost Rider with the white mask, who really only appeared in a handful of comic books, and then, did something very bad in Avengers West Coast, shall we say. But this has Leonardo Manco on it, with John Ostrander doing Western stuff. So, of course, this was coming out of the Tom Brevoort office. This looks like a nice comic book that I have never even seen a copy of. But anything that Leonardo Manco has ever drawn is worth looking at. Even that strange, Wacky Races book that we read a while back ago. What was up with that? It still looked good, even if it was vaguely offensive on some level. We switched stories. Where are we? What are we reading? So this is Stanley and Jack Keller. Jack Keller, there's not a name that gets any shine. I can't remember. Well, it's only a few pages long. I can't remember the last time I heard of Jack Keller. So here's this Lee and Kirby Western with, Matt Hawk. That's the Two Gun Kid, and he's tied up in his office, probably because he was attacked in his office as lawyer Matt Hawk. And see here, it's shrunk. I don't know. Maybe people would think it was direct mail nowadays because they got mad at Marvel for doing Marvel Mart in the early 90s, but they never really got mad at Marvel for the subscriptions. Maybe if they brought back subscriptions, turned it into more of a loot box type thing. They never tried doing that. That's how far away from that model of publishing Marvel is. But very simple, rudimentary storytelling, just like the monster stuff that we read sometimes. But it's like going to school. He's showing you how much he can do with one hand tied behind his back. They still end up being really, look at this, just like people shooting at each other. He's saving people from a burning building. People are shooting at him. He's riding a horse. This is one page. And it's got 8 panels on it. They don't make them like that anymore, folks. So, this last, I think it's the last one. Here's Caleb Hammer, who was, I can't even remember if there were even a handful of new Western characters at the company by the 70s. DC was having some luck with Westerns still because They kept Jonah Hex on the stands for a while into the 80s. Jonah Hex was quite popular, I think. But Marvel, they never really had any counter to Jonah Hex on the stands. This looks like it's maybe trying to play in that field. It's got Gene Day art. Not very many Gene Day art jobs outside of Master or Kung Fu, but that's a rarity for you. With Tony DeZuniga on inks, Peter B. Gillis writing, classic high Bronze Age, including some Gene Day that you probably haven't seen, even if you're a Gene Day fan. But yeah, Caleb Hammer. I don't think anything ever came of this guy. He wasn't, I think, the type that was going to get in a time machine and fight Kang like the Two Gun Kid. I don't think there were more than a handful of Caleb Hammer stories, and I think they were kind of dour, 70s Western stuff. Westerns in the 70s tended towards dour. The genre was, working towards some burgeoning feelings of maturity at that point. Yeah, this looks, like I said, kind of dark, playing around, maybe in the same space. I don't know what year this was, whether it's before or after Hex. But Hex was sometime in the mid-70s, I think. So, yeah. There was room on the stands for a book like that, but Marvel just, man, look at this, though. Look at this. Who is coloring this jazz? Ben Shawn. Don't know that name. But look at this. Yeah, okay. You want some of this Gene Day, Caleb Hammer stuff. You do. Look at this. This bright red. Yeah, this is definitely a Western book that seems to have been put together by people who had seen the Sergio Leone movies at least once. Not necessarily a feel you see very often on the comics page. But, yeah, like I say, I don't think Caleb Hammer was... Man, look at that. Look at that. With that. The dark red, magenta, moon view. My goodness. We lost a tremendous amount. Oh, hey, and it looks like Jonah Hex. There you go. And Caleb Hammer arrives to do what he's doing. You're not even worth my anger, Miki. Not even my penny. You're just another assignment to me. Just another lousy job. So, hard-boiled Western stuff. In another universe, maybe something like that could have taken off, but it just, Marvel wasn't really doing interesting stuff. No one walked through the door with an interesting enough idea for a Western for them to really put themselves behind, because I don't remember, like I say, Caleb Hammer, he was one of maybe a couple new Western heroes for that era. Marvel Comics monopoly. We're in the last era. This is 2000. We're in the last era before the movies really take over as embedding those versions of these characters in people's eyes. Spider sense tingling. Milk. And apparently, I spilled something on this comic at some point. What can I say, Or no. I think this was like this when I got this, because I maybe paid like 50 cents for this. I found this years after the fact. But, man, even if I had bought that new for $2.99, a bargain. Get Jack Kirby, Gene Day, Dick Ayers. Boom. There you go. So, that was a fun show. I needed a fun show. Anyway, if you like this show, check out the other shows I do. I do a lot of shows. Lots of shows. That's what we're supposed to do now, isn't it? Shows? I'm trying. I'm doing my best. I do daily comic book reviews on TikTok and Instagram. I got a podcast with Claire Napier on Top Cow Comics. That's Witchblade the Darkness. Michael Turner, Mark Silvestri, all that fun stuff. We have a lot of fun doing it. I think you'd have a lot of fun if you gave it a listen. We're available on Spotify, all the places that you go. There we are waiting patiently for you. What else? Oh yeah, I just put up a new article on the journal about Godzilla. First article I've had up in a few months. It's felt like a fraught period. Hasn't necessarily been a fraught period, but I haven't been writing as much. Sometimes you just have to recharge the old batteries. You know I'll be back sooner or later. What else? I don't know. Maybe that's it for the day. Have a wonderful day. Take care of yourself. Vibe's weird out there. Not even necessarily entirely bad. Just weird. So take care of yourself. Please be kind to small animals and children and yourself. Go into the world and do good things.